Why, I have been a truck driver for almost 15 years. Seen every kind of highway, every kind of dawn. But I've never felt as helpless as I did that night on Route 50, staring into my mirrors, realizing someone was following me through the desert. It's a funny thing, how a stretch of empty road can feel more crowded than a traffic jam, just because of one black SUV. I was hauling a load of high-end electronics from Sacramento out to Kansas City. The trailer was sealed, paperwork in order. No reason for anyone to care about me. It was late March, cold, dry air rolling off the desert, stars like shards of glass scattered across the sky. My cab smelled of diesel, stale coffee, and the faint chemical tang of the plastic casings stacked behind me. Sometimes I talk to myself on these long runs, or think about random crap. Like how my first truck was an old Peterbilt with a seat spring that poked into my thigh. Or how my kid used to cry when I left for jobs longer than a week. That stretch of Route 50 is called the loneliest road in America. Long ribbons of highway where you might not see another car for hours. I'd always liked it. Until that night. I first noticed the SUV right outside Austin, Nevada. Black, low beams, keeping its distance. At first, I thought nothing of it. Highway traffic has its patterns. Sometimes you leapfrog the same vehicle for miles. But something felt off. Every time I checked my mirrors, the SUV was still there. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther back. Its lights dipped out of sight on long curves, then popped up again, gliding along the blacktop like a shark fin in water. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe some family on a road trip, taking shifts, driving overnight. But my chest felt tight. I slowed down to 60, hoping they'd pass. The SUV slowed too. Then I sped up to 75. They matched me again. I felt sweat gathering at the back of my neck, even though the air blasting from my vents was ice cold. I flicked on my interior dome light, so whoever was behind me could see my silhouette. A weird move, I know, but I wanted them to know I'd noticed. They backed off about a quarter mile. For the next half hour, they kept their distance. I thought maybe it was over. I even caught myself humming an old country song. Then my headlights swept across a sign for a dirt pull-off. I decided to take it, just to shake them. As soon as I eased my truck onto the gravel, the SUV followed, its tires crunching over the loose stones. My mouth went dry. I killed my engine, sat there listening. The desert was silent except for the tick-tick of my cooling engine. Then I heard it. The faint metallic click of a car door opening. I leaned forward, peering into my side mirror. At first, I saw nothing but the dark shape of the SUV, idling behind me, headlights off. Then, two figures stepped out. Men, both wearing black hoodies pulled low over their faces. One held up a phone, pointing it toward my license plate. The other seemed to be taking photos of the side of my trailer. My heart thundered so loud I was afraid they'd hear it. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered, calm and professional. But I could barely form words. They're photographing my truck, my plates. They followed me for hours. While I whispered into the phone, I watched the men. One circled closer, trying to peek through my passenger window. I felt exposed, like an animal in a cage. Then suddenly, both men jumped back into the SUV. Its engine roared to life, tires throwing gravel, and it sped off into the darkness, taillights disappearing down Route 50. The dispatcher kept asking me questions, but I couldn't stop shaking. The cops took my report when they finally showed up an hour later. They told me cargo theft rings were getting bolder lately, following trucks for miles, scouting loads to hijack later. They said I was lucky those guys hadn't tried something worse. I nodded along, but I felt hollow inside. All these years on the road, I always thought the danger was mechanical failures, icy bridges, falling asleep at the wheel. I never thought about people. People who'd hunt me like prey, hidden in plain sight. Now every time I see headlights lingering in my mirrors, I wonder, is it just another driver? Or someone waiting to take everything I'm hauling? And maybe my life too? I used to think the scariest part of being a truck driver was falling asleep behind the wheel, or getting caught on a black ice patch at 3 in the morning. I never thought it'd be a motel room. It was the end of a 14-hour haul from Tampa up to Atlanta. I was hauling frozen food. Chicken breasts, mostly. The kind that sweats ice all over the trailer floor. By the time I hit Macon, Georgia, my eyelids felt like they were lined with sandpaper. My shoulders ached, and my back felt twisted into knots from sitting so long. I pulled off the interstate and found a place called the Lucky Clover Inn. The neon sign buzzed like an angry wasp, half the letters burnt out. But at that point, I didn't care. I just wanted 4 walls, a bed, and maybe a shower that wasn't rust brown. Inside the lobby, the air smelled like stale cigarettes and old pine cleaner. The woman at the desk hardly looked up as I paid for room 8. Walking across the parking lot, gravel crunching under my boots, I kept thinking how quiet everything was. No trucks idling. No voices. Just my own footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. The room smelled faintly of mildew. The kind of dampness that seeps into the curtains, into the carpet. I tossed my duffel on the bed and flicked on the lights. The bedspread was an ugly mustard color. The TV was bolted to the dresser. Standard motel stuff. But there were little things. One of the ceiling tiles above the bed was pushed slightly off-center, like someone had nudged it from the other side. In the bathroom, I noticed a towel balled up under the sink. It was stained and didn't match the folded white towels on the rack. And there was a faint rustling sound every now and then, like something shifting above me. I tried telling myself it was rats or old pipes. Motels always have weird noises. I went through my usual routine, texted my dispatcher, washed my face, checked my phone. But my mind kept drifting back to that ceiling tile, and the way the air seemed different under it, cooler somehow. I lay down in bed, closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Somewhere past midnight, I jerked awake. A scraping noise, like nails on drywall, drifted from above me. I stared at the ceiling. Fine dust fell in tiny streams from the edges of that shifted tile. My throat went dry. I swung my legs out of bed, crept closer, listening. And then, I saw it. 2 eyes peering down through a narrow crack where the ceiling tile didn't quite meet the frame. Eyes. Human eyes. I stumbled backward, my shoulders slamming into the bathroom door. A man's voice hissed down at me. "Don't call nobody!" His face appeared for a split second. Greasy hair, pale skin. He was sweating, pupils wide as quarters. I grabbed the phone on the nightstand, but he kicked the tile open and dropped into the room. He smelled like mold and old cigarettes. He lunged at me, tried to shove me against the wall. I fought back, adrenaline roaring through me. We crashed into the dresser, the TV rattling above us. He screamed that he'd been living there for weeks, watching people. Said I wasn't supposed to be in this room. I elbowed him in the gut and managed to bolt for the door. My hands were shaking so bad it took me 3 tries to work the lock. I ran barefoot into the parking lot, blood pounding in my ears. The cops came, took him away in cuffs. They said he'd been squatting in the crawl spaces for months, sneaking down into rooms when guests were gone, or sometimes when they weren't. I kept picturing those eyes staring at me through that tiny crack. I've been a trucker for 20 years, seen blizzards, wrecks, even a guy flip his rig right in front of me. but nothing ever crawled under my skin like knowing I'd been sleeping inches away from a stranger hiding above my head. Now, every time I check into a motel, I catch myself scanning the ceiling tiles. Because I keep wondering, how many times have I shared a room without even knowing it? I always thought trucking would be simple. Just you, the road, and the cargo in your trailer. But standing in the shadows of a Detroit warehouse, watching a man with dead eyes refuse to hand me paperwork, I realized there's nothing simple about this job. I'm 29. Been driving trucks for less than a year. This was supposed to be my first solo run. The load was supposed to be auto parts, picking up from a warehouse on the outskirts of Detroit. Easy money, they said. My dispatcher even texted me the broker's name. Tony. Short, bald, wearing a shiny bomber jacket. When I pulled into the industrial park, it looked half abandoned. Rusty fences. Weed-choked lots. Most of the warehouses had flickering security lights, buzzing like angry insects. I kept thinking of how my dad used to warn me. Don't ever let your guard down, Danny. The freight business can get dirty fast. At the time, I thought he meant shady contracts or late payments. I didn't realize he meant something much worse. Tony met me by the loading dock, hands shoved in his pockets. He barely looked at me when he said, "Cash up front." 500, I blinked at him. "I'm the driver," I said. "I don't pay you. You pay my company." He leaned closer, breath sour with cigarettes. "Cash, or you're not getting loaded." My pulse started hammering. I glanced around. There were 3 other guys hanging near the warehouse door, all in work jackets, staring at me without saying a word. That's when I noticed the security cameras on the corners of the building were all pointed up at the sky. Inside the loading dock, I heard one guy say, "How many bodies fit in a reefer trailer anyway?" And someone else laughed. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad joke, but my mouth tasted like copper. Tony barked at me to back my truck into Bay 3. I didn't move. He stepped closer again, voice low. "You didn't see nothing. You didn't hear nothing. Get in the dock. Now." I started backing away. I'm not risking my CDL on some mystery freight, but that's when the guy reached into his jacket. For a second, I thought he was pulling a gun. Instead, he pulled out a thick envelope and tossed it into my cab. I opened it. Cash, wrapped in a rubber band. Way more than $2,000. "Drive," he said again. My gut screamed to leave, but I also felt trapped. I was alone, in a dark warehouse with a guy who might be mob or cartel. So I hooked the pallet, rolled my door shut, and got the hell out of there. I spent the entire drive checking my mirrors, convinced I'd see black SUVs behind me. I kept the radio off. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear the engine. When I got to Indy, the delivery point was another empty warehouse. Same deal. A single guy waiting, no paperwork. Told me to drop the trailer and leave. I thought trucking was just highways and logbooks. Turns out, there are people out here who'll use drivers like pawns. People who'll smile at you while setting you up for something that could ruin your life. Or end it. I keep thinking about how close I came to backing into that dock. If I hadn't hesitated, if I'd just done what Tony said, I might have wound up carrying something I could never explain. Or disappeared entirely. Now, whenever I pull into a yard, I check the cameras. I watch the people. I question every handshake. Because I learned something my first year on the road. In trucking, the scariest cargo might be the people waiting to load your trailer.